What's going on, Lego Maniacs? It's Ty, the Lego guy here, and welcome to another Ty's Talks, a Q&A series. We're in episode 26. This one had a lot of great questions, including what's the best way to invest in Lego? Should you wait 10 years? Or should you maybe sell your set sooner? Along with which classic space set would I like to see re-released? Along with have I ever had any Lego sets maybe get brittle or Lego pieces? There's actually a lot of questions about the quality of Lego and if it gets worse over time, discoloration, etc. Along with a bunch of other really good questions. And again, guys, if you have questions for next Ty's Talks, just leave them in the comments and we'll get to them in episode 27. But enough talk, let's get right into it. And our first question comes to us from VGuard, and he says, question, have you experienced yellowing of Lego parts on your display sets? I do not get that. I even have my sets in direct sunlight for a lot of hours every single day. I can see the white parts are maybe a bit yellow, but I think they look fine. Heard it is mainly white and brown pieces if I remember correctly. So to answer your question, yes, I have definitely had sets discolor over time. Entire themes actually, like the Explorine theme was terrible for it. I had to replace so many pieces. The Imperial Shuttle, the Gun Sub, a lot of my old school Lego Star Wars sets. I don't notice that brown pieces discolor all that much, but white pieces, blue pieces, the grays, both dark and light, those are all terrible for discoloration. Yellow and tan is probably the least ones that I notice discolor over the years. Black, obviously, that doesn't discolor all that much. That's great that that's not happening to you. I just would be a little bit careful because I have had tons of sets discolor. I'm talking like between 30 to 50 sets over the years. So, I mean, it's definitely a thing to watch out for. But I mean, the fact that it isn't happening to you is awesome. Maybe you have some blinds or something which is helping, or sometimes there's these curtains or veils that go over the windows that kind of just affect how much sunlight gets through. So maybe you have something like that, but that's awesome that's not happening to you. But I would say just be careful about it because I definitely have had sets discolor over the years. Chris asks, how about a Ty's Take segment? What was your take on the final episode of Boba Fett? Any set ideas from the final episode? So this is a time appropriate question. My thoughts on the final episode, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great. Maybe out of 1 out of 10, it's about a 7. And as far as set ideas, I would really like to see a showdown duel set between Boba Fett and Cad Bane, just a $20 duel set. Along with maybe Boba Fett on a Rancor. I think that would also be a really cool model. You could get into the showdown between the droids and, you know, the good guys that are basically following Boba Fett. There's a lot of different sets you could maybe make, but those would be my choices. We are getting a lot more Boba Fett sets, so I wouldn't be surprised if they made, you know, any of those. But yeah, definitely, I like the Book of Boba Fett, not quite as much as The Mandalorian, and hopefully some of those sets come into production. Depressed Pumpkin asks, question, do you have any issues with Lego pieces or figures becoming brittle? I just took some Lord of the Rings figures out of storage and they feel very delicate and their limbs creak when moved. So I'm sorry to hear about that. Lord of the Rings is definitely not a cheap theme. A lot of those sets have appreciated a ton the last number of years. As far as if I've ever had that, for the most part, like 99% of the time, no. And when there has been issues, it's because I've played with the set a bunch. Like as a kid, a lot of my childhood sets, they got a lot of use. So the minifigures would crack, you know, between the arm and what's below the arm, the torso, along with bite marks or pieces breaking because I just played with them a bunch. So that's more so on me. However, I have had a few sets, specifically one set that I bought in 2010. So I was an adult collector at that time. It was one of the Kingdom sets, and that castle set probably had 30 pieces that had cracks in them. After only 2 years of maybe owning the set, I had to replace a ton of the pieces. I'm not sure if there was maybe a factory issue. I have heard that pieces are generally a little bit better quality if they came from Europe as opposed North America. I don't really know if that's 100%, but I could see that maybe being a factor. Lego generally has really, really good quality, and if you complain to them and said, hey, I only had this set for maybe 2 years or something, there's already cracks in it, Lego might send you the replacement parts for it. But yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that, and I would say my answer would be generally no. Lego's generally very, very good as far as quality is concerned, but I have had a couple off sets that the quality's been a little lacking, and especially those little brown cheese slope pieces, those crack like crazy. Karma Brick Creations says, great episode, Ty. What is your top 5 90s minifigs? Okay, so this is a good one. I'm going to go with Alpha Draconis from the UFO theme, Johnny Thunder from the Adventurers, Flatfoot Thompson from the Western theme. I'm also gonna go with the Dark Forest Man, like you mentioned. And last but certainly not least, Kingahuka from the Islander theme. That minifigure is awesome. The pirate theme in general is really good. There's a couple others that came to mind that also came from the pirate theme, but those are the 5 I'm gonna go with, and hopefully we see a return to a lot of those classic minifigures. Vigard asks, another question. Have you noticed with figures that their arms and limbs crack and get looser after some months of building the figs? Okay, so yeah, another quality question. I have not really noticed that if I don't play with them a bunch, but again, my childhood sets, the childhood minifigures, almost every single minifigure has a crack in the torso that's under the arm, and that's just from playing with it a bunch. So I have had that, but as far as new minifigures, I've not had this issue. If you guys do have this issue, I would complain to Lego because I think they'll do something special for you, because that's definitely a quality problem, and it's not your fault, right? You're not playing with them, they're just on display. So I definitely would say talk to Lego if stuff like that's happening to you. Peter says, I have a question for you, Ty. What classic space sets do you own, 80s and 90s, and would you like to see them make a comeback? I would, they are nostalgic for me. What classic space set in particular would you like to see re-released? All right, so great question. As far as what 80s and 90s space sets I own, I don't really own any 80s space sets. I do, however, own most of the 90s sets like UFO, Unitron, RoboForce, Explorines. I even have some Mars mission sets, which that's a little bit later, like early 2000s. I don't have many of the Insectoids. I'd like to get more of those as well. I also own, I think, every single set to come out of the Spirus theme. That pretty well covers all the space sets I own. I would really like to get like M-Tron and Space Police. I just don't own them, but I think they're awesome. As far as if I'd like them to have a comeback, definitely. I'm a huge supporter of any of the space sets returning. I think part of the reason we don't get that is because of Star Wars. Although we're getting a pretty cool looking Space City line. It's not quite as futuristic as the 90s space sets, but it's still quite, you know, futuristic. It's supposed to be, I think, 50 years in the future. At least that's what it looks like. And as far as which set I'd like to see re-released, it would definitely be the Unitron monorail. That set is going for crazy money. I had a chance to get it as a kid. I didn't get it, which was really stupid. But yeah, that would be the set that I'd go with. Beautiful looking set, although I'd be happy if they were to re-release any of the large scale space sets from the 90s. Brian Bricks has a very difficult question, which is, what theme would you collect if Lego only made these themes? Belleville, Fabuland, Scala, Galador. I'm gonna be perfectly honest here. I probably wouldn't like Lego if that's the options that we had. But if I had to choose, it would probably be Belleville. The only reason why is I hate their minifigures. I think that theme has the most amount of normal pieces in it. So potentially I could just buy a bunch of the sets, get rid of the really big pieces and the big figs that they use, and use the Lego bricks to kind of build whatever I want. That's probably what I would do, but Lego would definitely not be nearly as appealing to me if those were the only themes available. Alpha Bricks channel asks, regarding the stock market, they say that the longer you hold on to your investments, the greater the chance of positive returns. But what are your thoughts on investments in Lego sets? Keep the sets for a long time, 10 years or more, or sell them soon after they retired and their value has gone up? So this is a very interesting question. As far as investments are concerned, I've generally seen that with Lego sets, they generally reach their height 2 or 3 years after they retired. Yes, they may appreciate a little bit more after that time frame, but not all that much. To give you an example, I had bought 2 of the Super Star Destroyers, one for myself and one for resale, and I sold that one of those sets a year after it retired for about 800, 900 USD. And I bought it for about 400 USD. So I doubled my money. That set nowadays isn't going for all that much more than that. And it's been retired for almost, or actually 10 years now. So in that example, you're not actually gaining all that much from waiting another, number of years, and you're having to store this massive Lego set. Now, I will say that there are exceptions to the rule for sure, but generally I would say waiting over 10 years is just not all that great. Again, there are exceptions, but generally I've seen that after 2 or 3 years, you're generally gonna get the highest price or a pretty high price for it, and then it slowly appreciates after that. And our last question comes to us from Kylo Sam, and he says, ask Ty, have you ever watched Doctor Who? So believe it or not, I've watched 5 to 10 episodes of Doctor Who. I like it, I like the idea of it. Not the current Doctor, or I think even the, I forget the name of the actor, but the Doctor before the current one was my favorite Doctor, although I haven't seen all that many episodes. My sister and brother-in-law are huge Doctor Who fans. I'd like to get more into it, but how many seasons are there? Like 20, 30 seasons? They've been making Doctor Who for years. So yeah, I'd like to get more into it. I do like Doctor Who, I've seen it, but I definitely, I'm a little bit scared of entering a TV show that has that many seasons. Maybe recommend your favorite seasons and I'll see if I can maybe watch them. But that pretty well does this episode of Ty's Talks. And again, as always, if you have questions for next episode, just leave them in the comments and we'll get to them in episode 27. But that pretty well does the video. But if you liked it, leave it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, definitely consider subscribing and click that bell so you're notified for any future Ty's Talks. We do one of them every month, and yeah, you guys come up with all kinds of good practical questions that I hope are helping you guys out. But that's all I got for you again. But thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.